A US president, a British prince, tech billionaires, and Hollywood elite. One man's dark journey ties them all together. For years, Jeffrey Epstein manipulated the system, protected by a wealthy circle of powerful friends, and the silence they maintained not only in themselves, but ensured in others. Welcome to a series that uncovers how Jeffrey Epstein entangled the world's most powerful figures and got away with horrors for decades. I've followed this story for years, but over the past few months, I've been sifting through court documents, listening to witness and victim interviews, and compiling any and all information I can find on this wretched man. It gets pretty dark. This series is the result. By the end of this series, I believe I will put forward a pretty compelling case for exactly how Jeffrey Epstein evaded justice for so long, and who enabled him. But in order to do that, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, to a college dropout who gets hired at one of the fanciest prep schools in New York City, to then get fast-tracked to partner at one of the hottest brokerage firms of the 1980s, and then gets power of attorney signed over to him from the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. My friends, that isn't luck. If this series makes certain people uncomfortable, good. Because by the end of tonight, you're going to see why the island was just the beginning. And trust me, you're going to want to see just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Before the private jets, before the mansions, before Little St. James, Jeffrey Epstein was just another kid from Coney Island. But within a few decades, he would move in circles that most of us only hear about on the news. Presidents, princes, billionaires, and if the rumors are true, spies. The story starts in Brooklyn, January 20th, 1953. Seagate, a neighborhood at the tip of Coney Island. A quiet community on the edge of the city where people prided themselves on your name carrying more weight than your wallet. Now, despite the gates, it wasn't exactly a playground for the wealthy. But the middle-class facade masked a history of organized crime ties. In the 1960s, it was a hotspot for Meyer Lansky's gambling operations, a nexus where crime and intelligence overlapped.
Yet Lansky was more powerful, more influential than any of them in shaping the destiny and enormous success of the National Crime Syndicate, America's largest single business. His position is even more astounding when you realize that as a Russian-born Jew, he could never be a member of that inner circle of organized crime, the Italian Mafia.
Epstein's childhood here placed him in proximity, although indirectly, to networks identified as foundational to his later activities. From early on, Epstein showed signs of exceptional intelligence, especially in math and science. He skipped 2 grades, entering Lafayette High School at the age of just 14. He was also musically gifted, playing piano from a young age well enough that he was able to attend the Interlochen National Music Camp, which they should also probably be looked into, but that's a different documentary. Now, according to classmates, Epstein carried himself with a confidence and a bravado that often outweighed his actual accomplishments, which is a trait that would come to serve him well in the world of high finance. After high school, he attended Cooper Union in 1969, but then transferred to NYU's Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences. But by 1974, he had dropped out without a degree. That should have been a career dead end, but instead it led him somewhere completely unexpected. The Dalton School. In 1974, one of New York City's most elite prep schools hires a 20-something with no degree to teach math and physics. That teacher was Jeffrey Epstein. Former students recall Epstein's flamboyance in the halls, and that he had allegedly skipped a few grades in high school himself. Now, it should be noted here that the headmaster of the time of the Dalton School was Donald Barr, the father of future U.S. Attorney General William Barr. Now, Donald Barr's background is interesting to say the least in its own right. And before running Dalton, he had served in the OSS, or the Office of Strategic Services, the World War II-era predecessor to the CIA. And after Dalton, Barr would go on to write science fiction novels that contained disturbing references to sexual relationships with older men and underage boys. Yikes. Now, the hiring timeline here is debated, because officially Barr left Dalton a few months before Epstein's first fall semester, but Barr did have a reputation for irregular hires. But either way, Dalton was Epstein's bridge to the ultra-wealthy. Whether the decision to hire Epstein for Dalton was purely about talent or influenced by other factors remains unclear. In the final years of the Cold War, elite schools across the country were fertile networking grounds for high-level recruiting. Corporate, political, and sometimes intelligence. Researchers like Whitney Webb argue that Dalton, under Barr, acted as a talent-spotting node for non-traditional recruits, who combined technical skill, social charm, and malleability. Now, there is no declassified CIA memo directly linking Barr to CIA recruiting, but the OSS to education pipeline, as well as Barr's authority over Dalton, certainly lead credence to the theory. Dalton delivered Epstein straight to Manhattan's upper class. In a 2002 profile by New York Magazine, parents recall wondering why is a kid like this teaching at Dalton and not trading on Wall Street, and steered him in the direction of Bear Stearns CEO Alan Ace Greenberg. By 1976, Epstein had left Dalton for Wall Street. Epstein started as an assistant to a floor trader, but quickly rose through the ranks, becoming a limited partner by 1980. Bear Stearns was a high-risk, high-reward environment, and Epstein seemed to love it. Colleagues later recalled that Epstein specialized in moving money for clients who valued secrecy. That's not sketchy. According to investigative journalist Vicky Ward, many of these clients were involved in arms deals and offshore banking operations. By all known accounts, Epstein was thriving. Then, abrupt exit in 1981. The official story was that he had committed a Reg D violation by lending money to a client, as he alleged in sworn testimony. But others have suggested the problem was optics, as investigators were circling various Stearns accounts and the SEC was probing insider trading around a St. Joe Minerals offer. Either way, the door closed, but another opened. Epstein walked out of Bear Stearns with high-octane clients and a new standard line.
If you have money and a problem, I can fix it.
Another side note here, it was around this same time that Epstein was first connected with Stephen Hoffenberg, the man who was later convicted in the $450 million Towers Financial Ponzi scheme. According to official accounts, they met through defense contractors. Hoffenberg long claimed that Epstein played a central role in the Ponzi scheme, but no official documents ever named him. Hoffenberg's statements will only ever be allegations, but notice the orbit. Defense contractors, offshore vehicles, opaque cash flows, classic intelligence terrain. After Bear Stearns, Epstein launches something called International Assets Group, or I.A.G. And some early articles refer to the company as J. Epstein & Co., but either way, he described it to acquaintances as an asset recovery shop. On paper, the company specializes in helping clients recover embezzled funds from shady international deals. In practice, this kind of work often overlaps with intelligence operations. Whitney Webb notes that similar financial retrieval firms have historically been used as fronts for laundering money or moving funds covertly on behalf of intelligence services.
But, functionally, especially when you consider that the public sector is provably dominated and corrupted by these same private sector forces, and those same private sector forces are tied to intelligence and organized crime more often than not, who's really running the partnership?
Epstein's client list reportedly included arms dealers, foreign governments, and politically connected individuals. But Epstein pitched himself as a high-level bounty hunter for the ultra-rich. Friends even heard him himself hint at intelligence ties. Whether I.A.G. did conventional collections, covert finance, or both, what matters is that it connected Epstein to people who trafficked in secrecy. And it was during this time that Epstein's name began appearing in intelligence-adjacent contexts. By the mid-'80s, Epstein had reinvented himself as a money man to the ultra-wealthy, with a Rolodex to match. Somewhere during the mid-'80s, Epstein meets Leslie H. Wexner, the retail billionaire behind the Limited and later Elle brands, whose portfolio includes Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie & Fitch, and Bath & Body Works, among others. How exactly they met remains unclear. Some say through insurance executive Robert Meister, others say through mutual social contacts. But what is documented is that in 1991, Wexner signs a sweeping power of attorney, making Epstein his de facto financial proxy, able to sign checks, buy and sell property, and move money in Wexner's name. Wexner's money vaulted Epstein from merely wealthy to something else. Completely untouchable. And it came with a crown jewel, 9 East 71st Street, the Herbert N. Strauss House.
Jeff was a high school math teacher until he traded his blackboard for the big board in 1976. But he just couldn't keep out of the classroom. So when he was shopping for a new house, he bought himself an entire schoolhouse.
Public records show the mansion moved between Epstein-controlled entities in 2011 for $0. Earlier ownership traces back to Wexner. While Epstein consolidated power with Wexner, another thread was weaving its way through Columbus, Ohio. Southern Air Transport, a CIA-backed cargo line with Iran-Contra history.
The last time that Southern Air Transport was in the news was during the Vietnam War, when it was owned by the CIA. Now it's a private company, but its competitors still call it the CIA's favorite airline.
They relocated their headquarters to Rickenbacker in the mid-90s. Reporting shows the limited cargo lanes became a major throughput for the Hong Kong to Rickenbacker route.
The CIA is on our side, after all. In theory, anyway. That's an American outfit.
This move doesn't prove coordination with Epstein, but it does situate Wexner's logistics empire at a crossroads where intelligence-linked aviation meets private commerce. It's the kind of adjacency that begs for more investigation. By the late 90s, Epstein had transformed from an ambitious, degreeless math teacher to a billionaire, or at least a man who lived like one. His inner circle included politicians, royals, academics, and celebrities. He had private planes, a sprawling property portfolio, and the kind of connections that make legal troubles disappear. At least for a while. By the turn of the millennium, Epstein had parlayed his social access into institutional prestige. He reportedly joined the board of trustees at Rockefeller University, and he was publicly listed as a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. All signals that he had been fully normalized in elite policy and science circles. Those affiliations didn't just make him respectable, they made him untouchable. In a single generation, a math teacher with no degree became a jet-setting financial fixer with keys to the richest rooms in America. The mechanism was leverage. Math into money, money into access, access into impunity. In the next installment, we're going to be following what he did with that access. His planes, his properties, and most importantly, the network that formed around him.